you look at, number one, as a quarterback, what I looked at first usually was weather games or cold weather games or whatnot. So, because you're touching the ball all the time. So you look at, weather games. And I think, so I still do that. And then also you look at home and away, especially early, to see if you can get off to a good start. So there's not a big difference how I look at it as a GM or as I looked at it as a quarterback. But, as we talked about, we're a young football team, so we're going to have to get out of the chute fast this year.
All right, great stuff there from John Elway. Find that full interview at denverbroncos.com. We're joined now on Broncos Country Tonight by Matt Boyer from Broncos TV. Good evening, Matt. How are you?
Good, guys. We finally have a schedule to talk about. How about that?
Yep, pretty exciting stuff. We go through and break it down. I thought it was kind of funny there as John Elway's talking about the old quarterback in him goes through the schedule and thinks about those cold weather games. Reminded me a little bit of Peyton Manning, how he used to go back and forth. Is he going to wear a glove in this game, not wear a glove in this other game? But I guess you really can never take that out of your mindset, can you, Matt?
No, and you kind of got a sense for what Drew Lock might be looking at when he sees the schedule, because if you look at it just in the beginning, the New England game I thought was very, very intriguing, because we're so used to going to the Northeast when it's snowing, sideways, rain, cold, and we're probably not going to get too much of it. I mean, there's always the possibility in week 5 that we could see that, but probably not going to get that in week 5. The bye week, I think, in week 8 also gives some balance to the schedule. I know players seem to like a bye week in kind of the middle to give them a bit of a respite. So I think it's a pretty favorable schedule if you're a quarterback, for sure.
Now, Ben, the one game that I think is a city game in December, but otherwise, New England is going to be early in the schedule. Buffalo's here in Denver. Some of those breaks, as far as weather goes, is pretty good.
Yeah, you got to love that if you're a quarterback. You're not really super worried about playing in freezing temperatures or snowpocalypse 2.0 in Kansas City, I don't think. So I think this thing looks pretty favorable across the board. You get the teams you expect to be playoff teams at home. You get the cold weather teams at a time where it's probably not going to be as bitter cold as it could be. I think the schedule is very favorable for the Denver Broncos.
All right. I tend to agree. Okay, let's hear Matt Boyer's conversation with head coach Vic Fangio as they break down the schedule.
Last year, when we talked to you about the schedule, you said you never look too far ahead. It's only the first couple of games. This year, what catches your eye? Looks like we've got 2 out of the first 3 at home.
Yeah, we've got the Monday night opener, and then go on the road, and then come back home for Tampa. When you look at a schedule, it's really not who you play and when you play. It's a matter of the teams, what kind of status are they in. For instance, last year, Detroit was off to a pretty good start, and then they lost their quarterback, Stafford, and we played the Detroit late in the year with their 3rd-string quarterback in there. So those are the things that end up making a schedule advantageous or not. What's your injury situation? What's the team you're playing injury situation? More so than looking at it here in May and trying to, draw some conclusions. The only thing I did notice is we have a couple short weeks where we're going from Mountain Time Zone to East Coast Time Zone, one of them being a Thursday, and usually the NFL tries to avoid those. We got 2 of those in particular, especially the Thursday one, but hey, that's the way it comes out, Everybody gets on the short end of the stick some way.
At the Combine, you mentioned joint practice with the Bears as being a possibility. Is that still the plan? It looks like preseason schedule, the Bears will be in week 2 at home. You've got San Francisco and Chicago at home, and then at LA, at Arizona. Is joint practice still in the works for your team this year, preseason?
Yes, both of us would like to do it. The Bears would like to do it. We would like to do it. We requested that to be the second preseason game with that in mind, and hopefully we'll be able to do it. But in these times, who knows? And we might be able to squeeze one more in there too.
The division games, obviously, they hold a ton of weight. Week 7 against Kansas City, first divisional game. You finished 2 of 3 at home with divisional opponents this season. When you look at the division, KC, LA, and Las Vegas, gotta get used to saying Las Vegas, having looked at the division and what each team has done this offseason, what do you see when you look at the AFC West schedule within the 2020 schedule?
Well, obviously you start with the Chiefs, and they've been the top team in the division for several years now. And they're going to be a tough opponent, both home and away there. We play them once in the middle and once kind of towards the end. I think the Chargers this year, they were a team that was 12-4 and 18, and then last year had a tough season with a lot of close losses. I think they're more closer to being a 12-4 team than the team they were last year. I think they'll be vastly improved. And I think the Raiders are definitely improving. They improved last year from 2018 to 2019. This will be the third year of John being there, and they're bearing the fruits of the trades they made early on to try and stockpile draft picks. So they're going to be a much better team also. So I think our division, is one of the tougher divisions in the league.
All right, great stuff there, Matt. So let's talk a little bit about what Vic Fangio said there. It's a great point he brings up as it relates to you don't really know end of season, especially when you're thinking about, hey, you might see Justin Herbert. You might see some of these young quarterbacks. Who knows? He talked about Detroit, how you saw your third-string quarterback. So we don't really know those parameters. But as we look at the schedule, we do get a sense of how things could break for the Broncos if certain things happen. At least that's how I look at it in December.
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck out to me the most is just getting off to a hot start. We think about how young this team is and how important it is going to be to at least be around that 500 mark as you get out of the first quarter of the schedule. So I think that you're going to see an emphasis placed on, hey, we can't look too far ahead because this is a young team. We have to be ready from day one because when you've got the Chiefs, when you've got the Chargers and the Raiders, as good as they are, you can't be afforded, a 4-week trial period, if you will. I think the Broncos need to be ready to go week one against the Titans if they want a chance to get out of the blocks well.
Yeah, and Ben, on that, he talked a little bit about the AFC West opponents and how you really can't sleep on what the Raiders did to improve, what the Chargers did to improve. To assume you'll sweep the Chargers, to assume you'll even split with the Raiders again, maybe we can't get too far ahead, can we?
Well, you should never be presumptive in the NFL. The minute you start counting wins before you get them is the minute you start catching L's before you want them. And that's really not something you want to do. You start looking ahead and you see a Miami game on there, you circle that one. Next thing you know, you're in a dogfight. You're down, 28-24, and you're wondering what happened. It leads to that quicksand, that we always talk about. It leads to that kind of scenario where what's going wrong? How did this thing go wrong? You start spiraling. You got to get off the hot start, take it one game at a time, hit the bye week and say, hey, look, we got a winnable schedule down the stretch. We're in the thick of this thing. Let's keep it going.
I especially like that you pointed out Miami because they're going to be starting Tua Tagovailoa, who's one of my guys. I like that you pointed out that they're going to be a tough game. That's all I got to say.